In 2020, during Donald Trump's first term as president, he presided over the mismanagement of a global pandemic, which ultimately resulted in the deaths of more than 1 million Americans, widespread economic catastrophe, and nationwide spiritual and psychological distress. And now that he's president again, an increasing number of Americans are terrified about another deadly virus, hantavirus, which is making national news because of a viral outbreak on a cruise ship. And even though the virus is transmitted very differently from COVID or even the flu, Americans are understandably terrified because the likes of Trump and RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz are in charge of the nationwide federal response. And we have to talk about it, especially because Trump was asked about it by reporters and his answers were not particularly encouraging. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Trump responds to question about virus outbreak, quote, "We should be fine." This is from Mediaite, and we'll play the clip in just a second. Donald Trump said on Thursday that he'd been briefed on the recent outbreak of hantavirus and believed that Americans, quote, "should be fine." Trump spoke to press while visiting the Lincoln Memorial to inspect his renovation of the reflecting pool. A reporter asked the president if he had received briefings on the virus, making headlines for killing at least 3 people on board a cruise ship currently anchored near the Canary Islands. Trump confirmed that he had received the briefings on the outbreak, telling the press that his administration had, quote, "great people studying the virus," and that more details would follow. Okay, so now with that in mind, let's take a look at the clip. And for those of you who remember 2020 vividly or try desperately to ignore 2020, I understand why this might be a bit concerning. We'll get into it.
Our country. Any other questions?
Mr. President, I'm also with ABC News. Can I ask you
Fake
about
news.
the hantavirus? Have you been briefed on the virus?
Yes, I have.
Can you tell us what you learned in these briefings?
Well, I
Should
think you're
Americans-
going to be told everything, and you already have. It's very much, we hope, under control. It was the ship, and I think we're going to make a full report about it tomorrow. We have a lot of people, a lot of great people are studying it. It should be fine. We hope.
Should Americans be concerned that it's going to spread? And how are you
I hope
working
not.
to get
I
those
mean, I hope
Americans
not. We'll do the
home?
best we can, yeah.
To get them Americans.
Okay, as people are pointing out, this is quite alarming given that Donald Trump used to say similar things about COVID. Again, we will get into the differences in just a moment because I don't want to fearmonger. I understand. I'm concerned given how incompetent Donald Trump and RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz are. I understand that. But we also need to ground ourselves in scientific fact based on what we know. Just to get some of the reactions here. Ron Filipkowski of Midas Touch says, "I'm having really bad flashbacks to a very dark time." Jay Aubrey says, "Reassuring, sir. Thank you." Midas Touch says, "Not this again." The Lincoln Project says, "Just like last time. Remember?" Brian Tyler Cohen, friend of the show, says, "I mean, what could possibly go wrong?" Liam Neeson says, "Deja vu all over again." Eric Feigl Ding says this is the same thing Trump said about COVID-19. Even better this time, our health secretary is a quack named RFK Jr. We don't have a standing CDC director, and Trump eliminated the pandemic office again. It keeps going on. Adam Parkmenko says this is the same shit he said in February 2020. Quote, "It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China." A woman in her late 50s, medically high-risk patient, unfortunately passed away overnight. "This is a flu. It's like the flu. When you have 15 people and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down close to 0. Sam Stein, again referencing Trump, Sam Stein of the Bulwark. Trump, February 19th, 2020, when asked about COVID, quote, "I think it's going to be fine. They're not the same, I know." Kate Waywalt says, "I'm disassociating." Karen Travers says, "I asked Trump tonight about his briefing on hantavirus." And again, she restates what he said in the clip. "Nothing to worry about. He did such a good job last time," says Patriot Takes. The main wonk says, "We're really doing this all over again, aren't we?" Progressive political commentator Keith Edwards just responds with a smiling emoji. Encouraging, and again, you see people are responding with sarcasm. Joe from Jers says, "Holy fuck, we're back here." Aaron Rupar says, "Gulp," and he quote tweets Donald Trump from a February 2020 tweet. "The coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. We're in contact with everyone in all relevant countries. CDC and World Health have been working very hard and very smart. Stock market starting to look very good to me." Literally, the stock market looking very good to me. All right. Totally got that one right. And so on and so forth. You understand why people are rightly making fun of Trump for this or panicking somewhat. Midas Touch notes CNN reports that the CDC is dispatching teams to meet hantavirus-stricken MV Hondias cruise ship in the Canary Islands and escort American passengers back to the U.S. on a charter flight. Another CDC team is being sent to Nebraska, where passengers are expected to be quarantined at the National Quarantine Unit and Nebraska Biocontainment Unit. This is from CNN. So, let's look into some of these things. Again, we need to be very fact-based here. There's simultaneously no reason to panic as of yet, but there is sufficient reason to be concerned because hantavirus is dangerous, and again, the people in charge at the federal level are really dumb. It's a bad combination, but let's look at the facts. Axios reports why the hantavirus outbreak is different from the COVID-19 pandemic. The outbreak of a deadly virus aboard a cruise ship may sound like a familiar story, but while it is a serious scenario, public health figures aren't anticipating the next global pandemic. The hantavirus has left travelers isolating in their rooms, sparked a diplomatic debate about where the ship should port, and launched a contact tracing scramble. The Andes strain of the virus, which health authorities have identified as the culprit on the cruise, is the only one known to be capable of transmission between humans. 3 deaths have been reported and several others have fallen ill after the outbreak on the ship that embarked from Argentina early last month. So far, the World Health Organization says 8 suspected or confirmed cases connected to the ship have been reported. U.S. officials in at least 5 states are monitoring returning passenger symptoms, but no cases have been confirmed, the Washington Post reported. Yes, but health authorities are unequivocal. This is not COVID 2.0. The WHO's Director for Health Emergency Alert and Response Operations said at a Thursday press conference that, quote, if we follow public health measures and lessons learned from the prior hantavirus surge that hit Argentina in 2018, quote, we can break this chain of transmission. That doesn't mean the virus shouldn't be taken seriously. WHO's officials are urging cross-border collaboration to trace and contain the spread. And they warned that the virus's weeks-long incubation period, more cases are possible. Infections are rare, but come with a fatality rate of up to 50% in the Americas, per the WHO. Again, I want to be clear. What that means is, yes, infections are rare. But if you are infected, it's potentially a coin flip as to whether or not you live. It is serious. Still, WHO officials assess that there is no current risk of a COVID-like spread. No current risk of a COVID-like spread. Quote, this is not COVID, this is not influenza, said Maria Van Kerkhove, WHO's acting director for epidemic and pandemic management, said at Thursday's press conference. Quote, it spreads very, very differently. Transmission, health experts said at Thursday's WHO conference, has been associated with close, prolonged contact, such as between household members, intimate partners, and people providing medical care. The 3 deaths were all ship passengers. 4 others aboard the ship were later evacuated, 1 to South Africa and 3 to the Netherlands, for medical treatment and observation. A 5th case involving a ship passenger was confirmed in Switzerland. The passenger reported to a local hospital following an email from the cruise informing him of the outbreak and later tested positive. A Dutch flight attendant is reportedly also being tested for hantavirus after one of the victims boarded a flight shortly before her death. Carlos Del Rio, a professor at the Emory University School of Medicine, said in a separate Thursday press call with the Infectious Disease Society of America that even with low risk, the outbreak provides an opportunity to learn more about the rare virus. Quote, research to help us develop vaccines and develop treatments is urgently needed. And of course, the U.S. walked away from the WHO under Trump, which has directed a massive reordering of the nation's public health apparatus, including the CDC and NIH. What a great time for that stupid idea. WHO Director General Adelman says, oh my God, I'm going to butcher that name. So we're just going to refer to him or her as Madam Director. WHO Director General said that the outbreaks like this show why health security is a universal effort. Quote, the best immunity we have is solidarity. Viruses don't care about our politics and they don't care about our borders. So I want to be very clear here, folks. I've got a cruise coming up in a couple of months. I haven't taken one in years. I'll be honest with you. I'm concerned. My wife is concerned. But a lot of that, as the New York Times is noting, hantavirus is nothing like coronavirus, but it's bringing some COVID PTSD. Understandably so. It was an incredibly traumatic time. So we need to deal in facts. This is serious. The disease itself is serious. The virus itself is serious. But it's not as casually spread as COVID was or the flu. It's easier to get COVID or the flu based on the facts we understand now than hantavirus. So, to the extent that there's good news, that is good news. But the reason that people, in addition to understandable but irrational trauma, which we've all suffered it from one extent or another, the reason there is a rational basis to be concerned is Donald Trump is really, really stupid. And he mismanaged COVID's response terribly. Yes, Operation Warp Speed, which developed the virus, happened on his watch, but he can't even take credit anymore because it's so politically unpopular for his base. COVID skepticism and vaccine skepticism and scientific skepticism have run amok among the MAGA base in particular. Once upon a time, anti-vax sentiment was like relegated to a part of the fringe Hollywood left, like Jenny McCarthy, right, the actress. And now it's infinitely more prevalent among Trump supporters and Republicans. A third to a half of this country. And vaccines, work best when you have as much buy-in as possible. If you only have half the population meaningfully vaccinated and the other half isn't, that reduces vaccine efficacy by nature, right? You want as many people as vaccinated as humanly possible. That's the efficacy of vaccines. Trump not only allowed that sentiment to spread, he helped cause it, right? With his constant undercutting of Dr. Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx and Dr. Redfield, his various COVID team during COVID. Remember, it was an election year. So Trump had a political interest in downplaying the risk of COVID because he was worried it would cause political consequences. In so doing, it created even bigger political consequences because it resulted in mass infection and death. That was his fault. COVID was not his fault, but his response to COVID was his fault, and he fucked up. He fucked up. And the thing about pandemics is the best time to deal with them is in the beginning. And if you don't deal with them well in the beginning, the longer it spreads, it turns into a total clusterfuck. So Joe Biden, who was infinitely better on COVID than Trump, infinitely more responsible about COVID than Trump, had to deal with the consequences because at that point it was everywhere, right? So the only person who was in a good position to deal with it was Trump, and he fucked up because he downplayed the virus for selfish reasons. He undercut his own COVID response. He refused to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to tell Republican governors and Republican senators and Republican congresspeople and Republican officials and Republican voters, of whom they are mostly a cult, to take it seriously. He could have said, hey guys, listen, this is serious. We don't want it to get more serious, so let's all come together in a state of national unity. A Democrat, Republican, liberal, progressive, conservative, libertarian, it doesn't matter. Let's treat this like a national emergency. Let's hunker down. Let's get it done. Let's basically kill this thing early so it doesn't kill all of us later. He could have done that. He chose not to do that. So it is all his fault. And it is perfectly understandable given that he's in charge and RFK Jr. is in charge and Dr. Oz is in charge. We can easily make the case that the people who are in charge now are much more incompetent than the ones before. I understand people's concern. So here's how I look at it. I am concerned. I'm keeping an eye on it, but I'm not losing sleep over it yet. I'm not terrified yet. You have every reason to doubt the Trump administration, but also both local, national, and global experts all across the aisle are saying that though this is something to be taken seriously, it's not quite like COVID or the flu. But we will continue to track this, and hopefully the Republican Party will take this shit more seriously than they did in 2020. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.